content design to me is just that. It's part of the design. I want to take all of the sort of creative ideas and work that's been going on from a designer's point of view. I want to take the time crunch and the technical constraints that an engineer might have alongside that sort of big release that the PM has been pushing for the last like 5 months. If I can combine all of that and then put it together with your UX research, your branding from your marketing and that lingo that we send out that way, how customer services talks to our customers every single day. If I'm able to meet the customer at that top level with all of that information in one piece, that's kind of the art of it. Hi. My name's MJ, and I'm a content designer for Rapid7. And today I'm just here really to tell you a little bit about what that means. So I think this is my first talk, similar to Robbie, so I figured I'd start at the very beginning. So whenever I was a kid, I was really quite creative and really quite nosy. My dad was a joiner, still is to this day. And so growing up, a lot of my time was spent asking him how that works. Why is it built like that? What does it do? What is it for? I was the annoying kid who asked why all the time. That, I think, pretty much led me through my life into becoming a product designer. And I started doing that as an undergraduate in Ulster University. That was the physical side of things. So think woodworking, jewellery smithing, 3D printing, you name it, right? Towards the end of that degree, I sort of realized that I personally, not from anyone else's perspective, but I personally find that the iteration time that it took to redesign a chair just because you didn't like a wee tiny bit of the legs on it, taking months at a time potentially to do that was just a little bit too long for me. And I much preferred the sort of rapid prototyping that you get when you go to digital design. Because of that, I ended up pivoting. I went and did my master's in Ulster University as well, and I ended up doing the UX and service design master's there. While I was working at my master's, I also had a full-time job working in the NHS, and I was a medical secretary. And a lot of that was writing letters to patients, breaking results, news, good and bad, and working a lot with the consultants and the nurses there to communicate to our patients what they needed. That combination emerged basically in content design, and that is basically how I've ended up talking to you guys today. So, what does that mean? A lot of people have either never heard of content design or have heard of it vaguely, might know someone who knows her daughter works in it, something, doesn't know it at all. It's pretty small in Belfast right now, but it's a very important part of the process in my completely non-biased opinion. So to me, and it depends on who you ask because it will change every single time. It's a bit like UX in general. We're not all completely on board with exactly what exactly it is and nailing it down, but in general, the rule is using the right words, using the right tone, and using the right data. Those three things combined and presenting that to the right person is good content design. There are also a lot of other things that go on in the background there too. It's easier sometimes just to show you, which is ironic considering my profession, but here are some bad examples of content design. There is no hate to the people who worked on these because we've all been there and we all know what it's like. One on the left here is pretty bad use case of just not knowing your user, not knowing who's going to be seeing what you're giving them. And the other one on the right here, arguably actually less accessible than this one, which is shocking. I can't imagine trying to navigate that on a keyboard. As I was looking through these, there were plenty of bad examples, so I fished out two more that are a bit more UI specific because that's the industry that I work in. I have no idea if I agree or disagree with anything that this modal says. Sometimes there are too many words, which you will learn as a writer. On the other side of this, I have no idea what's wrong. I have no idea what that error means. And I have no idea why I'm logging in either. On the other hand, there are good ones out there. There is two UIs here. You'll probably recognize both of them. This is Airbnb on the left and Slack on the right. I personally use Slack a lot. I wish I used Airbnb a lot more because it would mean I was going on a lot more holidays. But Airbnb has a really good use here of this sort of subtext, that grey text that's underneath the main information. Text like that's not always necessary. In fact, sometimes it can actually hinder your designs, but when it's good, it's really good. For here, you'll have the castle to yourself. First of all, you're going to a castle in Airbnb, so you're already having a pretty good time, but you'll have the castle to yourself is an immediate sort of comfort to a user. I'm reading this and going, okay, so I know that all the people that are coming with me and the amount of money I'm paying will get me the whole thing in once. I don't have to think about that. I don't have to go digging through an FAQ or text the owner in a really awkward manner. The other one I like to point out here is the 100% of recent guests, and note the word recent, give the location a 5-star rating. Again, I'm comforted as a user. I have a bit of trust now. I feel like it wasn't a fluke 5 years ago when they had maybe a different building assigned, that this actually is a good place to stay. On the other hand, we have Slack, which really is a good use case as a flip of that bad example of knowing your audience. We have the words clients and partners. So for anyone who doesn't use Slack day to day, it's a very primarily business-focused tool. If you haven't used it before, think Microsoft Teams, Skype, RIP, things like that. You the way that they are communicating here as they know their audience, they know who's reading this, they know why they're giving it to them. They're keeping it short, keeping it simple, and that button at the end there, see how it works, I know exactly what that's going to do. Another example, which you were spoiled there a minute ago, was sent to me by one of our designers in Rapid 7, Kira McCurdy. She was at the Pandemonium in North Carolina last week, and she thought I would like this, and she was 100% right. This really shows you like the psychology behind writing and how your brain works when it interacts with words. My eyes did exactly what this billboard said it would do, and I just think it's sort of fascinating and a bit of a use case in learning from a writer's perspective that most of the time you have to know that some of the things you write will never be read at all. So, did I answer the question? Not sure. Content design to me is just that. It's part of the design. I want to take all of the sort of creative ideas and work that's been going on from a designer's point of view. I want to take the time crunch and the technical constraints that an engineer might have alongside that sort of big release that the PM has been pushing for the last 5 months. If I can combine all of that and then put it together with your UX research, your branding from your marketing and that lingo that we send out that way, how customer services talks to our customers every single day. If I'm able to meet the customer at that top level with all of that information in one piece, that's kind of the art of it. At the end of the day, I think that can be a little bit tricky and it's a little bit nuanced sometimes, but that's kind of where I live. So that can cover many things. So we've got documentation, you've got UI copy, you have release notes, notifications, emails. If you see words, I was probably involved in some way, in some form. Why does that matter? So it's a bit strange to say it, especially because I'm standing up here acting like it's a big thing. But my job is to actually make sure that you have no idea that I'm there. As a content designer, I want to be able to bring together all of those words from all of the folks that are involved and bring it into one sort of harmony. I do a lot of singing in my spare time. I will not threaten you with that tonight. But being a content writer is a little bit like being the notes in the choir, a bit like writing that sheet music in the choir. You want the music to all be level and all come out right. You want everybody's parts to sing through in their own way, but you want it to harmonise, so you don't want to hear somebody going for a bit of an ill-timed solo. That choir is made up of many people. So you have PMs, you have engineers, you have your business leaders, you have strategic folks, legal folks, regulatory folks. They all have parts of that song. It all sort of ties together. And that kind of goes up a level and is sung up the way. And that involves their part of their song, involves their needs and their wants, but it also sort of involves part of their customer understanding as well, what they're hearing specifically from the customer. That gets absorbed by our quote-unquote customer-facing external folks. That includes your support teams, so the folks that are out on 24/7 with your customers, solving all the problems. You have your marketing folks who use their language and sort of try and gain and retain our customers. And then you have the quote-unquote UXers, right? So the rest of us. You have your UX research, your designers, and then your UX content. A lot of the times, the content will sort of be baked into the experiences that designers will display, but there's also a lot of times where you'll get standalone pieces that come from myself as well. It's important to note at this point, though, that you can have this whole song that customer at the top level will hear. It's important as part of that song that they hear a bit of an echo of themselves back in the song. That means we've empathized with them, we've heard them, we understand what they wanted from us, and we've given it to them. What's important, though, is we also introduce new notes so that we show them new features, things that can improve their overall experience. You can make an experience as beautiful as you can, but you have to build trust with the customer in order to actually give a good experience. If we think of, think of content as a fishing net, right? We kind of sort of catch the slip that might happen when you as a designer try and explain what's happening with no words on the screen. I personally have been here for these times where the designer's design is so intuitive that you just immediately know what to write on it and you know how to describe it. But a lot of times we work on nuance, we work with complexity, and a lot of the times the projects we are working on are pretty much workarounds to the things we actually all wanted to deliver in the first place. And that's kind of where I come in, where I kind of help that from one modal to the next. How do we string this together and make that make sense? That can apply to writing as well, as you can see. A single sort of misspell isn't the only thing that can go wrong. You can have misaligned style guides, because we have those too. When we talk about design, we have the style guides for words as well, what to say, what not to say, what will translate into other languages, and how to avoid those sort of local phrases. How do we use punctuation? All of that's all included in a style guide from a writer's perspective. We can have unified terminology. If our words are misaligned across different areas in our products, then we lose trust and we lose empathy from a customer's side of their point of view. Give an example. I'm going to embarrass the folks that are here from Rapid7 tonight when we talk about this. The Rapid7 internally, we have a design system. We call it the RDS. For any technical folks here, that is also Amazon's relational database service, which is obviously, as we work in cybersecurity, pretty technical and pretty popular with our customers. If that internal lingo slips out into those conversations, it becomes really messy really quickly. So trying to avoid those things is really important. We've all seen it. We've probably read it, at least some of us have read it. If we haven't seen it and we haven't read it, we probably can tell just by looking at the title what it's about. If I have to make a customer reread a sentence and go, I don't know what that really means, or if they have to read instructions and go, I don't believe that, I don't think that's how that works. Anything like that, if I put doubt into a customer's brain, into a user, then as a company, we sort of have to sort of play to regain that again, and that takes a lot of time. We, on the other hand, can't focus on every single letter. If I did, I'd have a backlog bigger than the DVLA, and frankly, I don't think it would be helpful for me to do it. If you were here a few months ago, you would have seen Jared Fossey do a talk on thinking big and thinking small. I currently work with Jared, so I was able to see that even though I wasn't able to make it to the talk. And we had a really good discussion about it. And that applies to me too. Knowing when to focus on things is actually a really good skill to have in general, in design, but just in general in the workplace. Avoiding burnout, avoiding all that sort of stuff that is so important currently in the current climate that we're in. If I sort of try and spend most of my time explaining in really high detail how to get to writing a query for a highly skilled technical analyst, I am wasting my time and I am wasting their time. But if I'm able to turn around and say, well, here's how you can use our product to get to that data as fast as you possibly can in the quickest possible way, that matters to them and it matters to me. So this is a Slack message that's been anonymized, but the message remains the same. Whenever we as content writers work with designers day in and day out, a lot of the time it's seen as a good thing to just sort of give us the reins and go like, just go for it. You know what to do. And I actually have to say that most of the time that's not helpful. Being able to keep the user on top of mind includes me being involved with you guys when that comes to how the design works and what it means and what it does. At the end of the day, we don't have this sort of general user. I read a blog, really beautiful blog recently by a woman called Helena Roadman. She's a UX writer for Apple, and she works in their human interface design department. And she writes a blog, it's called The Body Copy. Really, really cool blog, really recommend it. In her blog recently, she was talking about in writing, and when we use writing, she was talking about racism and classism, ableism, and she went in, and I have a quote from her, let me go find it, because, let me see. This is what happens when your presenter notes are not on your screen, by the way. This is a help. So quoting her directly, she said, "When we say make it sound human, we're assuming a very specific type of human. Nope, not good enough." She goes on and she references this idea of the 7 principles of data feminism, which are written by 2 women, Catherine D'Ignazio and Lauren Klein. Helena's sort of advice based off of their 7 principles was this idea of embracing pluralism. So I quoted her again, and she said, "Ditch the idea of the universal user, neutral language, default human. It does not exist. There are specific people in specific bodies with specific histories." This actually applies when we talk about AI and writing too, and massively works with Robbie's talk that we just listened to. As one of the most common use cases we see it today, AI with writing, it can be extremely useful. You want to fill that blank page, get something down on paper. But even with the trained models, it's sort of it's a niche in understanding that an AI can help you understand formatting and basic grammar. But you have to be understanding the human need underneath that in order to actually utilize the AI properly. If I'm not able to actually translate what the AI is generalizing and saying kind of in general, based on all of the things you've ever told me, this is what you should aim for, it's my job then as a writer to go in and build on top of that and go, okay, but I know the specific user in that specific experience in that specific time that they will be using this and why that's useful for them to know. That means a lot of the time I end up cutting out a lot of the things that an AI will suggest that I say, or taking it and putting it way somewhere else and going, that's right, but it's not right for here, it's over here. So I think that is good practice in general, but it's also good practice of being a writer. There's a understanding in knowing that this new technology is here to stay. It's part of our workforce now. And it's part of being a good writer from my side to understand what to even write in the first place to get that AI to help me out as well. So a lot of the folks that work with me will see me basically in GitHub all day long and panic because they go, what are you doing? You're being a designer and why are you looking at code? And to that I say, here, please get me out of GitHub. But I think there's a bit of an assumption for those who have worked or have heard of content writers or UX copy or UX writing or whatever you want to call us. We ironically have a really hard time with naming ourselves despite the whatever. So people assume that help copy, UI docs, or UI copy and release notes is basically all we do. And while that's absolutely true because I work in there a lot, I can't have any of those things without this sort of structure at the start. Again, it is all about the customer's needs. If you're not thinking about the customer absolutely first in everything you're doing, especially as a designer or a writer, you've already kind of lost the game. Once I have those use cases and those understandings, only then can I build on top of it what we as a company really should be having, so our team should be having. So as I mentioned earlier, style guides. So what punctuation we go by? Are we talking American spelling? Are we going and keeping things consistent across the board? We have content modeling, information architecture, systems thinking, all those baseline sort of strategy pieces that you need. Content modeling, who here, apart from these guys at the back, because I know they have, who has heard of content modeling before? Cool. So I would have to do a completely different talk on this because it is a little bit complex. The basic idea is you have a lot of complex environments and a lot of data in those complex environments. As part of this idea of a quote-unquote content-first design approach, the idea is that in order to get a fully fledged workflow from start to finish that completely makes sense from a user's perspective, you need to understand from the very back end of the data all the way to what the customer interacts with. And that all should say the same thing the whole way through. A lot of the times, especially when you're working with legacy products, or for example, like if you're a company that has acquired another company, a lot of the times your influence is just sort of taking over what they already had in place, and that can be difficult to adjust to. And keeping things aligned is really hard, and that's what content modeling helps us do. Moving on from that, once I have all of the strategy in place there, I can then basically rely on other people, which is a really good part of my job. Ironically, as a writer, if I'm using a lot of my own words, I'm maybe not the best writer in the room. UX research, personally, think they're massively underrated. They're an absolute goldmine of information, not only for designers and engineers, PMs, to sort of understand how they interact with products, what they're doing with the products, and what they want from us next, what the big thing should be that we focus on and sort of strategize around as a company. But also for myself, I get to listen in, I get to eavesdrop and say, well, how are they talking about that thing? Or what's this thing that they were referencing? Or, okay, so this seems to be how they all talk about that one thing. I get to correlate all of that information across all of our customers and then really understand how to talk back to them, how to explain to them what I'm saying is what they were talking about 3 weeks ago. Industry standards are part of that. So what every company is calling that one feature that's the big seller right now, or what the emerging technology is gaining a nickname of, or what to use when we're talking about things. And then marketing language, that kind of builds on top again. So how are we sort of we talk about making things like sticky, trying to make our products like relatable and keep them somewhere where customers will want to come back to. Using that language is a lot of that. So how we want to sort of build in, and I can reflect a lot of their selling language with the language when they meet us in the product. And it sort of gets that full journey together as well then. Only once I have all of that baseline, I can only then start to actually make valuable. I can always make these at any time, but I can only really make valuable versions of them once everything else exists. All that is to say that if you ever work with a content designer again, or if you ever get to come across one in the wild after me, please don't involve us when we're here, right? If this is the only lesson that you get tonight, please involve us down here. When you're starting off a journey, we need to understand why you're doing the journey in the first place. A lot of the times, we don't really get used to our sort of best ability. I can only really truly turn around and say, yeah, I've done a valuable piece of help documentation that will actually be worthwhile, unless I've been here the whole time. It's a bit like, from the designers in the room, it's a bit like saying, yeah, we're going to invent this thing and it's going out next week, so can we have some hi-fis? You can do it, for sure you can do it, but can you truly say, okay, and it's what the customer actually wants and it's what the customer actually needs? So, in short, part of my job is being that source of truth across the company. Being the calm in the storm, doing the context switching, and sort of hopefully convincing you guys as designers that we need one more button in the modal. If you haven't worked with a content designer before, I hope you want to now. I think that keeping the choir on track is not exactly easy, but it's a bit more helpful when you have some sheet music to guide you. If I go unnoticed, that's when you know where you're winning. If all that seems really complicated and really, really hard and really impossible, that's because words are really hard. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions either about what content is or...